So I'm going to open up into the book of First Kings, chapter 19. So we went over First Kings chapters 17, all right, and we previously went over First Kings chapter 18. So we were dealing with a little bit of the history of Elijah the prophet, and as I said before, we're going to start here in chapter 19. I'm going to read verse 1, and I'll kind of be jumping around a little bit, from the Old Testament to the New Testament, and also in various other writings in the Old Testament as well. About Elijah. So it reads, Holy text reads, all right. And Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and withal how he had slain all the prophets with the sword. So now remember, in chapters 18 of First Kings, we had Elijah versus the prophets of Baal. And in that battle, all right, because basically, it was a battle for the minds of the people, So you had 450 of the prophets of Baal, and you had Elijah, who was just one prophet. Now, what they wanted to do, what was being done here was that Elijah wanted to show the power of the God of Israel and show how folly believing in Baal, right, actually was to, the people of the northern kingdom, Israelites of the northern kingdom, all right, and also to Ahab himself. So, so Jezebel was not there, but Ahab was, all right, and he was witnessing, he witnessed the event of how the prophets of Baal, right, you might as well say the prophets of Jezebel, how they failed, right, to basically cause their God to light the sacrifice on fire, all right, because that was a part of, part of the battle, right? It was whoever's God would light the sacrifice first, then that's who the people would basically choose to serve, right? So that's why Elijah was like, if Baal be God, then serve him. Or if the Lord be God, then serve him, right? So why are you stuck between two opinions? So then he was like, all right, well, let's settle this once and for all. So as he did, right, he basically told them, right, we're gonna if we're gonna douse the sacrifice with water, right? We're gonna douse the meat with water, and whoever sacrifice lights on fire first, and that's who be the winner. All right. So after hours, right, of chanting and bloodletting and all that stuff, the prophets of Baal could not summon their God to do what? To light the fire on the sacrifice. So, so then Elijah mocked them, right? Is Baal asleep? Is he on some sort of far journey? Huh? Where he at? Why he ain't like the sacrifice? So what ended up happening is you see that Elijah was like, well, look, I want you to douse this sacrifice right with water, right? I believe he did about like 4 or 5 times, right? Where he just doused it with water. And he prayed to the God of Israel, right, in the sight of all of the people. And the Lord God not only consumed the water, right, but he also consumed the sacrifice that was on the altar as well. And this thing caused the people to bow before the God of Israel and give him praise. And it showed that he is the God, the Elohim, the power, all right, the Almighty. So after that, the prophets of Baal basically were put to death, all right? All 450 of them were killed, okay? And Elijah, basically let Ahab know what was going on, all right? So I believe then rain ended up coming after that, all right? So we're gonna jump into this in the book of First Kings chapter 19. All right. So now, as I said before, and Ahab went back and told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and how withal he had slain all the prophets of Baal with the sword. Okay. So remember, Jezebel, she basically commanded the same thing be done to the prophets of Yahweh, right? How many of them were killed? Okay. So, so let's continue to read. So remember, Jezebel, as we read before, excuse me, Jezebel, she is the daughter of King Baal, right? Who was a Zidonian king. So she would basically have been a Zidonian princess, all right. And they married Ahab. I'm sorry, she married Ahab, okay, who was the king of the northern kingdom of the house of Omer. All right. So so now you have this Israelite, you have these, you have these Zidonians, which were basically Canaanites, right, in union. So Jezebel was very evil. She was a very evil woman. All right. She was an idolatrous woman. All right. And you'll know for a fact that she was the one who was running things. All right. And how Ahab basically was, you know, he basically depended on his wife. All right. So it says, verse 2, then Jezebel sent a messenger unto Elijah, saying, so let the gods do to me and more also, if I make not thy life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time. Right. So she basically said that I'm going to kill you. All right. I'm going to kill you. Okay. Just to sum it up. All right. So she wanted Elijah dead for what he had done to her prophets. Okay. And remember, we had looked up what actually the name Baal and what Baal meant and stuff like that, right? So Baal basically meant owner or Lord, right? So basically it was a god of the Canaanites, right? All right, or Phoenician deity. Okay. So this was a god in which they worshiped that they called Baal. And we saw that Baal was a horned, basically like a bull god, right? A bull or a ram that they worshiped. Okay. So now it says, verse 3, and when he saw that, he arose and went for his life. So basically he ran for his life. Okay. Ran for his life. All right. Because she was coming to kill him. All right. She was going to send God men to kill him. And it says, and came to Beersheba, which belonged to Judah, and left his servants there, right? So basically, you see that Elijah basically went to Beersheba, which is located in Judah. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a juniper tree, and he requested for himself that he might die, and said, is it enough now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am not better than my fathers, right? So all of the, of which Elijah was going through, right? He was like, man, this is a lot, okay? So oftentimes when a lot is put on us, right, sometimes we wish that we would just die, all right, expire, okay? This is how Elijah was feeling. He says, as he laid and slept under the juniper tree, behold, then an angel touched him and said unto him, arise and eat, right? So an angel came. So this was a spiritual being that came to him and touched him, right? And basically told him to arise and eat. And he looked, and behold, there was a cake baking on the coals, and a cruse of water at his head. And he did eat and drink, and laid him down again. So it's showing you that he ate and he drank here. So it was an angel that visited Elijah, right, and brought him food, right, and water to drink. Okay. Because like I said, the journey was very long. And remember, he was running for his life because Jezebel was trying to kill him. Jezebel was trying to kill Elijah. All right. Now, it says, the angel of the Lord came again the second time and touched him and said, arise and eat, because the journey is too great for thee. You see that? So the angel came and brought him more food, all right, and gave him more water, okay? And he arose and did eat and drank and went in the strength of the meat 40 days and 40 nights unto Hebor, the mount of God, all right? So it shows you went to Heber, the mount of God, okay? So real quick, I want to look that up, all right? To show you the importance of Heber, all right? Real quick. So it shows you right here. It says the Sinai Peninsula, the location of Mount Heber or Sinai is a problem that has vexed Old Testament scholars for over hundreds of years. There's a tradition which can be tracked back as far as Elias of Caesarea, perhaps further, which locates the mount in the southern part of what is now known as the Sinai Peninsula. Okay, so basically Mount Sinai, all right, the Mount of God, where it is located. So remember, that's where our fathers basically went, and that is the mountain that that Moses went up, right, to meet with God. Okay, hold on one second. See, we can read about that in the book of Exodus. Okay, so here, let's read this in Exodus chapter 19, right? I'm gonna start at verse 1. Now it says, in the third month, when the children of Israel were gone forth out of the land of Egypt, the same day came they into the wilderness of Sinai. It says, for they departed from Rephidim and were come to the desert of Sinai and had pitched in the wilderness, and there Israel camped before the mount, right? It says, and Moses went up unto God, and the Lord called unto him out of the mountain, saying, thus shalt thou say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel. Okay. So it's showing you, right? It said he came out of the mount, so that they were already in the wilderness of Sinai. So now I'm going to drop down and I'm going to read I'm still in Exodus chapter 19, but I'm going to drop down and read verse. I'm going to read verse 17. Now it says, and Moses brought forth the people out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood at the nether part of the mount, and Mount Sinai was altogether on a smoke, because the Lord descended upon it in fire, and the smoke thereof ascended as the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mount quaked greatly. All right. So just to show you about Mount Sinai. So it says Mount Heber was Mount Sinai. All right. So this is where Elijah basically was headed. Okay, this is where Elijah was basically headed. There's another one I wanted to get. It's in Deuteronomy. Let's see if I pull it up in Deuteronomy. Okay, here we go. It says here in Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 1. I'm going to start at verse 1. It says, "These be the words which Moses spake unto all Israel on this side Jordan in the wilderness, in the plain over against the Red Sea, between Paran and Tophel, between Aran and Tophel, and Lebanon and Hazoroth, and this it says there are 11 days journey from Hebron by the way of Mount Seir unto Kadesh Barnea." All right. So it's just telling you about Mount Hebron. All right. Let me see. I'm gonna drop down and read verse 5. Now it says, "On this side of Jordan, in the land of Moab, began Moses to declare this law, saying, Yahweh our power spake unto us in Hebron, saying, Ye have dwelt long enough in this mount." Right? So I'm showing you where he spoke. So when you go back to the book of Exodus chapter 19, Exodus chapter 19, it shows you right where he spoke to the children of Israel out of the mountain. All right. So let's go back to chapter 19 in First Kings. Okay. So this is dealing with First Kings chapter 19. All right. So this is where he was basically going. It says he arose, I'm going to read verse 8 again. He arose and did eat and drink and went in the strength of that meat 40 days and 40 nights unto Hebron, the mount of God, right? So we're just showing you, right, just how important the mount of God is, or Mount Sinai, actually is, all right? So now it's something else that I was reading too. I'm gonna look over some more, right? But there are actually more. There are actually other mountains, right? And they have them in like Native American. It's like in Native American history, where like certain mountains or like certain mountains, hills, they actually had a how can I say it? They actually had like a divine presence to them, right? So it's like so almost in the instance like when we're talking about Mount Horeb, right, which is Mount Sinai, and how we see that's where God spoke to the people, his people, by this mountain. So now there were other mounts, right, that you read about in Scripture, right, like Mount Carmel, Mount Gizor, right, where basically the Lord was dealing, was speaking to his people, but there are also other like sacred mountains that that's like in other parts of history, right, that I was reading about, mainly Native American. And and it was just showing how they would see like spirits, right, descending, you know what I'm saying, to those mountains, you know what I mean. So that's why certain Native Americans held certain mountains very sacred and holy to them. All right. And you see, like Esau, he likes to build his observatories on these mountains, right? You know, to basically test out those theories. All right. So that's why he builds his observatories there, to see the celestial beings and the powers. And I want to look into that some more. All right, and I definitely bring it to you guys because it is interesting. So let's continue. So now it said verse 9. So it says, "And he came hither unto a cave and lodged there. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him. And he said unto him, what doest thou here, Elijah? Right? So it said the word of the Lord came unto him. And he said, I have been very jealous for Yahweh, the God of hosts. For the children of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, thrown down thine altars, and slain thy prophets with the sword. And I, even I only, am left, and they seek my life to take it away. All right. And he said, go forth and stand upon the mount before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind rent the mountains and break it in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind, and after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice. And it was so when Elijah heard it that he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood in the entering of the cave. And behold, there came a voice unto him and said, what doest thou here, Elijah? Right? So all of this is happening, right before Elijah. So he took his mantle, right, and wrapped it around his face. You know what I mean? Because remember, there was a fire that happened, and then all the dust and debris and stuff like that, and the smoke. So it shows you here, and the Lord is speaking to him, getting his attention. And he said, I have been very jealous for the Lord God of hosts, because the children of Israel have forsaken thy covenant and thrown down thy altars and slain thy prophets with the sword. And I, even I only, am left, and they seek my life to take it away. And the Lord said unto him, go return on thy way to the wilderness of Damascus. And when thou comest, anoint Hazael to be king over Syria, right? So now you see what the Lord is about to do now. He's about to set up Israel, the northern kingdom's next enemy, all right? And Jehu, the son of Nimshi, shalt thou anoint to be king over Israel. And Elisha, the son of Shaphat, of Abel Meholah, shalt thou anoint to be prophet in thy room, right? So now you see, as the Lord is giving them instruction, right? So he says, all right, these will be the instructions that you follow, all right? Because now we will see that Elijah is basically setting up things, and also to have a prophet in his stead, all right? Because if many of you have ever read, you know what I'm saying, the history of Elijah, right? You'll see that the Lord took him, okay? And we're going to read that too. And it shall come to pass that him that escaped the sword of Azael shall Jehu slay, and him that escapeth from the sword of Jehu shall Elisha slay. Okay. So you'll see how when you basically read this, when you read the book of Kings, right? From at this chapter and here on, you'll see where Jehu began to come in, right? And you'll see when Elisha also began to come in as well. Yet I have left me 7,000 in Israel, all the knees which have not bowed unto Baal, and every mouth which have not kissed him. Okay. So he's also talking about the prophets, right, that basically were preserved, okay, in Israel. So he departed thence and found Elisha, the son of Shaphat, who was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen before him, and he with the 12th. And Elisha passed by him and cast his mantle upon him, right? So he basically placed his mantle upon him, showing a sign of, yes, this is a sign of succession. Okay, you are going to be the next prophet in line, all right? And he left the oxen and ran after Elijah and said, let me, I pray thee, kiss my father and my mother, and then I will follow thee. And he said unto him, go back again, for what have I done to thee? And he returned back for him and took a yoke of oxen and slew them and boiled their flesh with the instruments of the oxen and gave unto the people, and they did eat. Then he arose and went after Elisha and ministered unto him. Right. So basically he became the servant of Elisha. All right. So he basically was an apprentice. Okay. So he did everything that came along with an apprenticeship. All right. So let's go to chapter 20. And let's see how everything also begins to unfold, right? So now remember what Elisha, right, had to do. So remember, he had to anoint Asiel as the king. Okay. So I won't be too long with this chapter, all right? Because this deals with war. Okay. So now it says, Ben-Hadad, the king of Assyria, gathered all his hosts together, and there were about 32 kings with him, and horses and chariots, and went up and besieged Samaria and warred against it. And he sent messengers to Ahab, king of Israel, into the city, and said unto him, thus said Ben-Hadad, thy silver and thy gold is mine, thy wives also, and thy children, even the goodliest are mine. And the king of Israel answered and said, O my Lord, O king, according to thy saying, I am thine, and all that I have. So he ain't putting up no fight. He's like, all is yours. All right. And the messenger came again and said, thus speaketh Ben-Hadad, saying, although I have sent unto thee, saying, thou shalt deliver me thy silver and thy gold and thy wives and thy children, yet I will send my servants unto thee tomorrow about this time, and they shall search thine house and the house of thy servants, and it shall be that whatsoever is pleasant in my eyes, they shall put it in their hand and take it away. See that? So he said, look, that's like something. you see how much of a punk Ahab was? You see what I'm saying? He's like, man, he ain't put up no fight, none of that. He's like, all right, whatever you see is yours. Whatever you see is yours. That's like the equivalent of somebody coming up in your house saying, like, I want your husband PlayStation, PS5. I want your kid's bed. I want all the food in your refrigerator. Oh, I'm gonna take the refrigerator too. You know what I mean? You can give me this. You can give me this nice table. You know what? I'm gonna take that nice little 40-inch screen TV, and I'm gonna take the 50 in your bedroom. It's all mine. You see what I'm saying? And you just sitting there like, yes, go ahead. This is yours. Just take it. You know, you ain't putting no fight, no nothing. It says, then the king of Israel called all the elders of the land and said, mark, I pray you, and see how this man seeketh mischief. For he sent unto me for my wives and for my children and for my silver and my gold, and I deny him not. And all the elders and all the people said unto him, hearken not unto him, nor consent. Right? So they giving them the counsel of don't listen to him. It says, wherefore he said unto the messenger of Ben-Hadad, tell my lord the king, all that thou didst sin for to thy servant at the first I will do, but this thing I may not do. And the messengers departed and brought him word again. right? So now he's like, nope, I'm not gonna, what you just asked for to run up in my house and take everything, I'm not gonna do that, right? But at first he was with it. He was like, he was gonna do it, right? But then once he saw counsel of everybody else, they're like, nah, don't do it. So he gained a little backbone. So it says, and Ben-Hadad sent unto him and said, the gods do so unto me and more also. If the dust of Samaria shall suffice for handfuls for all the people that follow me. And the king of Israel answered and said, tell him, let not him that girdeth on his harness boast himself as he that putteth it off. And it came to pass when Ben-Hadad heard this message, as he was drinking, he and the kings in the pavilion, that he said unto his servants, sow yourselves, set yourselves in array. And they set themselves in array against the city. So he was like, as he was drinking, as he heard this, he was, all right, get ready, let's go. We about to kill him. So, so it says, Ahab victorious, all right. And behold, there came a prophet unto Ahab, king of Israel, saying, thus saith the Lord, hast thou seen all this great multitude? Behold, I will deliver it into thy hand this day, and thou shalt know that I am Yahweh. And Ahab said, by whom? And he said, thus said Yahweh, even by the young men of the princes of this province. And he said, who shall order the battle? And he answered, thou. So he's like, you. He's like, well, who gonna set the battle in order? He said, you. You gonna set it in order. You gonna lead the people, right? But it just goes to show you, right, how even God still had mercy, you know what I'm saying, on the northern kingdom, right? And still how he was trying to get through to them, right? And show them that, look, I am the God of your fathers. I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You know what I mean? I'm the God that brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage, right? He is that God. Okay. So you see, like, he's still sending his prophets, right, to, you know what I'm saying, to the kings of Israel, right, the northern kingdom, and letting them know, like, look, you know, he's still with you. So this is just going to show you, man, how merciful the Heavenly Father is, how long suffering and how patient he is. Okay. And remember, it said that Ahab set himself to do mischief far above any other king that has ever sat upon the throne of Israel. All right, we're talking about worse than Solomon, worse than Rehoboam, then worse than Baasha, worse than Jeroboam, Baasha, and the rest of them. All right, that were before him. So, so now it says, then he numbered the young men of the princes of the province, and they were 232. And after them, he numbered all the people, even all the children of Israel, being 7,000. So he only had 7,000, right, men basically at his disposal. Okay. It says, and they went out at noon, and Ben-Hadad was drinking himself drunk in the pavilion, he and the kings, 32 kings that helped him, right? It says, and the young men of the province, and the young men of the princes and of the provinces went out first, and Ben-Hadad sent out, and they told him, saying, there are men come out of Samaria, right? And he said, whether they be come out of for peace, take them alive, or whether they be come out for war, take them alive. So these young men of the princes of the province came out of the city, and the army which followed them. And they slew everyone his man, and the Syrians fled, and Israel pursued them. And Ben-Hadad, king of Israel, escaped on a horse with his horsemen, right? So you see, man, they were sitting there, they thought the battle was gonna be so easy, right? They drunk themselves, they were drunk as hell. All right. He's like, look, If they come out for peace, take them alive. If they come out for war, I still want them alive. All right. So so then you see the you know, the Lord, as he told him, he's like, he's going to deliver them into their hand. All right. And it says, and the king of Israel went out and smote the horses and the chariots and slew the Syrians with a great slaughter. And the prophet came to the king of Israel and said unto him, go, strengthen thyself and mark and see what thou doest. For at the return of the year, the king of Assyria will come up against thee, right? So we said in a year, the king of Assyria is going to come back up against him, all right? And it says, and the servants of the king of Assyria said unto him, their gods are gods of the hills. Therefore, they were stronger than we, but let us fight against them in the plain, and surely we shall be stronger than they. So remember, Samaria was on a hill, all right? So they had a strategical advantage anyway, okay? But nonetheless, it was still the God of Israel that won the battle for them. He says, and do this thing, take the kings away, every man out of his place, and put captains in their rooms, and number thee an army like the army that thou hast lost, horse for horse and chariot for chariot, and we will fight against them in the plain, and surely we shall be stronger than they. And he hearkened unto their voice and did so, right? So then here's another war that basically takes place, all right? So it says, and it came to pass at the return of the year that Ben-Hadad numbered the Syrians and went up to Aphek to fight against Israel. And the children of Israel were numbered, and all were present and went against them. And the children of Israel pitched before them like two little flocks of kids. But the Syrians filled the country, right? So it shows you just how small, you know what I'm saying, the northern kingdom's army actually was, right, compared to the Syrians. It said they filled the countryside, but you just had this small army of the Israelites. So remember, God always showed us that it's not about numbers, okay? With him, it's not about numbers. It never has been about numbers. He can take 5 men and kill 100. He can take 100 men and kill 10,000. That's just how our power rolls. He could put the spirit of war on us so cold. Remember, he took 1 man and killed 1,000, right? Samson was 1 and he killed 1,000 Philistines. Okay, and we read about how, you know, Benaiah, the son of Jodadah, right? How he slew a giant, right, and killed a lion. Okay, he killed 2 of Moab's best warriors, right, with little to no effort. So it goes to show you just how powerful, you know what I mean, we are when our God is with us, and how we will prevail. All right. So you look at the so-called Negro today, you know, you look at us, right? We sit here, many brothers don't have no training, no none of that, right? But we still whoop anybody behind. Still whoop anybody behind. And you looking at us at our weakest spiritual state. So just imagine what happens when we're training, when we're at the top of that spiritual strength, right? And the God of our fathers is with us and watching over us. We ain't gonna be able to be touched. All right. So you know you have so you know you just we have that, okay? That that ability and that gift, right, of war on us, right? But it's just now it says, and there came a man of God and spake unto the king of Israel, saying, thus said the Lord, because the Syrians have said that Yahweh is the God of the hills, but he is not the God of the valleys. Therefore will I deliver all this great multitude into thy hand, and ye shall know that I am Yahweh. And they pitched one over against another 7 days. And it was so. And it says that in the seventh day, the battle was joined, and the children of Israel slew of the Assyrians 100,000 footmen in one day. 100,000 footmen in one day. That's how great of a slaughter it was. All right. So it just goes to show you how the Lord God ain't dealing with numbers. All right. And it just goes to show you, right, even for his own name's sake, how he'll even deal, you know what I'm saying, with our fathers, right? To show his power. Okay. To show his power. It says, but the rest fled to Aphek, and it says, into the city, and there a wall fell upon 27,000 of the men that were left. And Ben-Hadad fled and came into the city, into the inner chamber. And his servant said unto him, behold, now we have heard that the king of the house of Israel are merciful kings. Let us, I pray thee, put sackcloth on our loins and robes upon our heads, and go out to the king of Israel. Peradventure he will save thy life. So they girded sackcloth on their loins and put robes on their heads, and came to the king of Israel and said, thy servant Ben-Hadad said, I pray thee, let me live. And he said, is he yet alive? He is my brother. Look at that. Now the men did diligently observe whether anything would come from him, and did hastily catch it. And they said, thy brother Ben-Hadad. Then he said, go ye, bring him. Then Ben-Hadad came forth, and he caused him to come up into the chariot. And Ben-Hadad said unto him, the cities which my father took from thy fathers will I restore, and thou shalt make streets for thee in Damascus, as my father made in Samaria. Then said Ahab, I will send thee away with this covenant. So he made a covenant with him and sent him away. Then a certain man of the sons of the prophets, so this was a school, right? So this was a school, okay, that basically trained prophets. It says, a certain man of the sons of the prophets said unto him, his neighbor in the word of the Lord smite me, I pray thee. And the man refused to smite him. Then said he unto him, because thou hast not obeyed the voice of the Lord, behold, as soon as thou art departed from me, a lion shall slay thee. And as soon as he departed from him, a lion found him and slew him. So that was dealing, I believe, with Ben-Hadad. And it says, then he found another man and said, smite me, I pray thee. And the man smote him, so that he smiting, he wounded him. So the prophet departed and waited for the king by the way, and he disguised himself with ashes upon his face. And as the king passed by, he cried unto the king and said, thy servant went out into the midst of the battle, and behold, a man turned aside and brought a man unto me and said, keep this man. If by any means he be missing, then shall thy life be for his life, or else thou shalt pay a talent of silver. And as for thy servant was busy here and there, he was gone. And the king of Israel said unto him, so shall thy judgment be. Thyself has decided it. And he hastened and took the ashes away from his face. And the king of Israel discerned him that he was of the prophets. And he said unto him, thus saith the Lord, because thou hast let go out of thy hand a man whom I appointed to utter destruction, Therefore, thy life shall go for his life, and thy people for his people. Check that out. So he said, because he let the king Ben-Hadad go, right? He wasn't supposed to let him go. He was supposed to utterly destroy him, but he did not do it. So he's saying now his life is going to be in place of the king's life, since he did not execute judgment upon him. All right. And the king of Israel went to his house heavy and displeased and came to Samaria. So that's his fault. He let him go. All right. He should have killed him and utterly destroyed him. Okay. But it shows you the type of person that Ahab was as well. Right. So we got chapter 21, right? Let's see. You guys can read chapter 21 yourself. I wanted to read this right here. This is in 1 Kings 21, chapter 21, verse 25. It says, but there was none like unto Ahab, which did sell himself to work wickedness in the sight of Yahweh, whom Jezebel, his wife, stirred up. Right? So it shows you his wife had a lot of influence, all right, in his habits, okay? And you'll see that he killed him, that he basically she ended up having a man killed, right, for his vineyard, the vineyard that Ahab wanted, right? But he knew that he couldn't take it. So she ended up doing the dirty work and then presented the vineyard to her husband, Ahab, which gratefully took it, all right? So you guys can read the rest of that. So let me see. Now let's read this right here. Okay, here we go. All right, let's read start at verse 17. And it says, and the word of the Lord came to Elijah the Tishbite, saying, arise, go down to meet Ahab, king of Israel, which is in Samaria. Behold, he is in the vineyard of Naboth, whither he is gone down to possess it, where he's gone down to possess it. And thou shalt speak unto him, saying, thus saith the Lord, hast thou killed and also taken possession? And thou shalt speak unto him, saying, thus saith the Lord, in the place where dogs lick the blood of Naboth, shall dogs lick thy blood, even thine. Right? So he letting them know, man, that death. So he's letting Elijah know to tell Ahab that death is coming to him. All right, death is coming to him. He's saying that as the dogs licked up the blood of Naboth, he said the dogs are going to lick up his blood. And Ahab said to Elijah, hast thou found me, O my enemy? And he answered, I have found thee, because thou hast sold thyself to work evil in the sight of the Lord. Behold, I will bring evil upon thee, and will take away thy posterity, and I will cut off from Ahab him that pisseth against the wall, and him that is shut up and left in Israel. So he said he's going to cut off his posterity, meaning he's going to cut off his whole line. Anybody that comes from him, he's cutting him off completely. So he's like, there's not going to be any more descendants of Ahab, none of that. His name is no longer going to be in Israel, right? So we know that he had sons. He had many sons. You see what I'm saying? Ahab had many sons. But he was like, you know what? He's like, ain't one of them gonna be left. That's what the Lord meant. All right. And you see that the Lord kept his word too. All right. And how he exterminated his entire house. So remember going back to what we read in chapter 19, right? Where Elijah went to Mount Horeb and he told him to do what? He said, this is what you're going to do. I want you to anoint Azahel, king of Syria. I want you to anoint Jehu, king of Israel, and I want you to make Elisha, the son of Shaphat, your apprentice. All right. So that's what he did. So you see that you start to see many of those things begin to unfold. Okay. Now it says, verse 22, and I will make thy house like the house of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, and like the house of Baasha, the son of Ahijah, for provocation wherewith thou hast provoked me to anger and made Israel to sin. All right. So remember, he did cut off Jeroboam, right? He cut off Jeroboam's line, and he also cut off Baasha's line. So remember, when he cuts off a man's line, meaning that he takes out all his sons. There are no sons left whatsoever. Okay, there are no sons left. So it says, and Jezebel also spake, and of Jezebel also spake the Lord, saying, the dog shall eat Jezebel by the walls of Jezreel, right? So he didn't say lick up the blood. He said the dog shall eat Jezebel, okay? It says, him that dieth of Ahab in the city, the dog shall eat, and he that dieth in the field shall the fowl of the air eat. It says, but there was none like unto Ahab, which did sell himself to work wickedness in the sight of Yahweh, whom Jezebel his wife stirred up. And he did very abominably in following idols, according to all things as did the Amorites, whom Yahweh cast out before the children of Israel. And it came to pass when Ahab heard those words that he rent his clothes and put sackcloth upon his flesh and fasted and laid in sackcloth and went softly. See that? So when he heard the words in which Elijah was speaking to him, right? So remember, that's not a good thing. All right. He knows how Elijah rose. He knows how the God of Israel is with him. So when the God of Israel said, your line is going to be cut off, your wife is going to be eaten by dogs, your blood is going to be licked up, right, by dogs, okay? Anybody that's attached to you, guess what? You know what I'm saying? They're going to be eaten by dogs, right? So he's letting them know, man, it's not going to end good for Ahab. It's not going to end good for him. And that's when it said he rent his clothes, right? He put sackcloth upon his flesh, right, and fasted. And it said he laid in sackcloth and went softly, all right? So he was sitting there whimpering, crying, and trying to say, sorry, Father, okay? Now check this out. And the word of the Lord came to Elijah the Tishbite, saying, seest how Ahab humbleth himself before me? Because he humbled himself before me, I will not bring evil in his days, but in his son's days will I bring the evil upon his house. See that? So he said, so he literally letting them know, right? Because he repented, he humbled himself, okay? He says, I won't bring the evils that I said I was going to bring upon him, all right? But I'm going to bring them upon his sons. So now his sons, they continue in wickedness, they're going to pay for the sins of their father. All right, they're going to pay. Okay, so that's where you get the whole understanding of the third and fourth generation of them that hate me. All right, that's the whole thing. Okay, so I remember I was listening to the Clubhouse thing, and everybody was kind of was like kind of off about it and stuff, like the third and fourth generation thing. But when you read the scriptures, it's like you'll understand what he's talking. What the Lord is talking about when he's talking about the third and fourth generation, right? He's talking about those that continue to do evil, right? The generations that continue to do evil. Those are the ones who's going to put that evil. Now, if the father repents, right, but the sons continue in wickedness, then who's going to receive the judgment? Sons. They're going to receive the judgment, all right, all the way down to the future generations, man, that still ain't in repentance. They're still going to receive the judgment, all right? But the Lord's going to bring somebody back, and then that person's going to be punished for their sins when they're being brought back in reincarnation. Nope, that ain't what it's talking about. That is not what it's talking about. That is not what it's talking about. All right. If your house does evil, then guess what? The descendants of that house is going to reap of that evil. Okay. Like the Lord said in Ezekiel chapter 18, right? If the father that did murder, that did violence, that did crime, that oppressed people, that did all kind of evil and wickedness, if he repents, right, and does that which is lawful and right in the eyes of God, then he shall receive mercy. All right, he's going to receive mercy. And if the sons continue in that wickedness, then they're going to be the ones to die. All right, for the evil that they're doing. Okay. But yet and still, that means that all of what their father did, now all of that is going to be laid on them because they still continuing in evil. All right, on top of their sin. So it says, so again, he said, but in his son's days will I bring the evil upon his house. All right. And you'll read about that evil that came upon his house when his sons were basically they were being massacred. They were being killed by who? By Jehu. All right. By them being exterminated like that. Okay. So now this is when Ahab ends up getting killed and suffering his fate. But I want to skip to 2 Kings. I want to go to 2 Kings now. You guys can continue to read 1 Kings chapter 2, just continue to read chapter 22, you know what I'm saying? All the way, all the way. Okay. Let me see. I want to read this real quick. Let me see. Hold on 1 second. Okay, we can read this. I'm going to read this before we go to 2 Kings. So now it says, this is in 1 Kings chapter 22 and verse 13. So this is Micaiah's prediction, right? So this says, and the messenger that was gone to call Micaiah spake unto him, saying, behold, now the words of the prophets declare good unto the king with one mouth. Let thy word, I pray thee, be like the word of one of them, and speak that which is good, right? So remember, many of the prophets, right, that were basically that sat before Jehoshaphat and Ahab, right? At this time, you know what I mean, they were lying to Ahab. They were telling them, go, you're gonna have victory. Go up. You're gonna have victory. But Jehoshaphat knew that they were full of garbage. So he's like, is there not one real prophet here? So then they call Micaiah. All right. So now this is Micaiah giving his word. And Micaiah said, as the Lord liveth, what the Lord saith unto me, that will I speak. So he's like, so basically, it ain't no cap coming from him. All right. It ain't no lie coming. He says, so he came to the king, and the king said unto him, Micaiah, shall we go against Ramoth Gilead to battle, or shall we forbear? And he answered him, go and prosper, for the Lord shall deliver it into the hand of the king. And the king said unto him, how many times shall I adjure thee that thou tell me nothing but that which is true in the name of Yah? And he said, I saw all Israel scattered upon the hills as sheep that have not a shepherd. And the Lord said, these have no master. Let them return every man to his house in peace. And the king of Israel said unto Jehoshaphat, did I not tell thee that he would prophesy no good concerning me, but evil? So he's like, didn't I tell you? And he said, hear thou therefore the word of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting on his throne, and all the host of heaven standing by him on his right hand and on his left. And the Lord said, who shall persuade Ahab that he may go up and fall at Ramoth Gilead, or Ramoth Gilead? And one said on this matter, and another said on that matter. So look, they're having this council about who gonna persuade, Ahab to go to Ramoth Gilead to die. And there came forth a spirit and stood before the Lord and said, I will persuade him. Right? So this was a lying spirit that appeared before the Lord and said, I will persuade him. Okay. And the Lord said unto him, wherewith? And he said, I will go forth, and I will be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. And he said, thou shalt persuade him and prevail also. Go forth and do so, right? So you see, this is Micaiah letting them all know, right, what thus said the Lord. Okay. Like he said, what the Lord tells me, that's what I'm gonna speak. All right. So he's telling them what the Lord showed him. All right. So he's like, I'll put a spirit in the mouth of all thy prophets, right? A lying spirit. And that's exactly what they were doing. That's what exactly all the prophets that stood in the gate. That's exactly what they're doing, lying to the king. And it says, now therefore, behold, the Lord put a lying spirit in the mouth of all these thy prophets, and the Lord hath spoken evil concerning thee. So it said, but Zedekiah, the son of Kenani, went near and smote Micaiah on the cheek and said, which way went the spirit of the Lord from me to speak unto thee? And it says, and Micaiah said, behold, thou shalt see in that day when thou shalt go into an inner chamber to hide thyself. So he let him know. He's like, yeah, you're going to see in the day when you're going into a chamber to hide yourself. All right. And the king of Israel said, take Micaiah and carry him back unto Amon, the governor of the city, and to Joash, the king's son. All right. The king's son. Okay. So you had Jehoshaphat, who was the king, All right, and his son's name was Jehoash, or actually the other way around. So I just wanted to read that. I just thought that was very interesting, right? Just to show you how the Lord has these councils or these judgings, right? Where he'll cause where he'll cause these spirits to come forth and look, you know what, you're going to persuade this situation to go this way, you're going to persuade this situation to go that way. All right. And he just gives them the okay or not, right? The same what you read here is the same that you'll read in the book of Job. Okay. The book of Job, chapters 1 and chapters 2. All right, about the sons of God presenting themselves before the, the sons of God presenting themselves, before God, right? And Satan was also, so Satan was also a part of those sons of God, all right, that presented themselves. Because remember, Satan is a creation of Yah. All right, so now it says, all right, so now this is dealing with Azariah. All right, it says, then Moab rebelled against Israel after the death of Ahab, and Azariah fell down through a lattice in his upper chamber that was in Samaria and was sick. And he went and he sent messengers and said unto them, go inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron, whether I shall recover of this disease, right? So he's sitting there going to inquire of one of the gods of the Philistines, all right? Beelzebub, okay? Or basically like what they call the Lord of Flies. All right, that's the same Beelzebub that the Pharisees said that Yahushua had. All right, they said he basically cast out spirits by Beelzebub, the Lord of Flies. Right. So this is the same deity. All right. Now it says, now therefore thus saith the Lord, thou shalt not come down. I'm sorry, verse 3. Now it says, but the angel of the Lord said to Elijah the Tishbite, arise, go up to meet the messengers of the king of Samaria and say unto them, is it not because there is a God, is it not because there is not a God in Israel that ye go to inquire of Baalzebub, the god of Ekron? Now, therefore, thus saith the Lord, thou shalt not come down from the bed on which thou art gone up, but thou shalt surely die. And Elijah departed. So he told him that Azariah was going to die. Okay. He told him he was going to die. All right. So I believe he reigned in Ahab's stead. It says, and when the messengers turned back, and he said unto them, why art thou now turned back? And they said unto him, there came a man up to meet us and said unto us, go, turn again unto the king that sent you, and say unto him, thus said the Lord, is it not because there is not a God in Israel that thou sendest to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron? Therefore thou shalt not come down from thy bed on which thou art gone up, but shall surely die. And he said unto them, what manner of man was he which came up to meet you and told you these words? And they answered, he was a hairy man and girt with a girdle of leather about his loins. And he said, it is Elijah the Tishbite. Then the king sent unto him a captain of 50 with his 50. And he went up to him, and behold, he sat on top of a hill, and he spake unto him, thou man of God. The king said, come down. And Elijah answered and said to the captain of 50, if I be a man of God, then let fire come down from heaven and consume thee and thy 50. And there came down fire from heaven and consumed him and his 50. Again, also he sent unto him another captain of 50 with his 50. And he answered and said unto him, O man of God, thus hath the king said, come down quickly. And Elijah answered and said unto him, if I be a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and consume thee and thy 50. And the fire of God came down from heaven and consumed him and his 50. So you see how Elijah is rolling here. You see what I'm saying? You see the power that was bestowed upon him, right? I'm telling you, you can read about this also in the book of Revelations, right? Where it said about the two prophets, how they're gonna be able to, to cause fire to come down from heaven, how they're also going to be able to cause droughts and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? All of that, that's in Revelations. All right. Now you see that Elisha's doing it right here. Okay. So remember, he basically he prophesied drought would come, and then also what? He made fire come down from heaven, and it consumed these captains and their 50. So he's killing them. All right, so he's killed about 100 men or 102 men, because you got the captain and then his 50. So you got 50 men. So that 50-50, that's 100, right? Plus those two captains, it's 102 men that he's killed, and they had to move a finger. He just spoke it. And he sent again a captain of the third 50 with his 50, and the captain of the third captain of 50 went up and came and fell on his knees before Elijah. So you see that this captain humbled himself. The first two, they weren't humbling themselves, right? They came at him foul. So he's like, so this captain came and humbled himself completely, right? So he says he fell on his knees before Elijah and besought him and said unto him, O man of God, I pray thee, let my life and the life of these 50 thy servants be precious in thy sight. Behold, there came down fire from heaven and burnt up the two captains and the former 50s with their 50s. Therefore, let my life now be precious in thy sight. And the angel of the Lord said unto Elijah, go down with them, be not afraid of him. And he arose and went down with him unto the king. And he said unto him, thus said the Lord, for as much as thou sent messengers to inquire of Baal-zebub, the god of Ekron, it is not because there is no God in Israel to inquire of his word. Therefore thou shalt not come down off that bed on which thou art gone up, but shall surely die. So he said, you're going to surely die, right? So he died according to the word of the Lord which Elijah had spoken. And Jeroham reigned in his stead in the 2nd year of Jeroham, the son of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, because he had no son. All right. Now it says, now the rest of the acts of Azariah, which he did after, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel? Right. So back in First Kings. So now it says, Elijah taken to heaven. And it came to pass when the Lord would take up Elijah into heaven by a whirlwind, that Elijah went with Elisha from Gilgal. And Elijah said unto Elisha, tarry here, I pray thee, for the Lord hath sent me to Bethel. And Elisha said unto him, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. So they went down to Bethel. And the sons of the prophet that were at Bethel came forth to Elisha and said unto him, knowest thou that the Lord will take away thy master from thy head today? And he said, yea, I know it. Hold ye your peace. Right? So this was something that they all knew and understood, that Elijah was leaving, right? So he's like, so to Elisha is like, hey, don't you know that the Lord's about to take your master away from you? And he's like, I know, be quiet. You know what I mean? Like he didn't want to hear it. You see what I'm saying? Now it says, and Elijah said unto him, Elisha, tarry here, I pray thee, for the Lord hath sent me to Jericho. And he said, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. So they came to Jericho, right? So at every opportunity, Elijah was given Elisha just to stay behind, right, and wait while he handled some business, right? He was like, no, I'm not leaving your side. You know what I mean? He said, I'm not leaving your side. And the sons of the prophets that were at Jericho, so show you that they had a camp at Jericho as well, all right, came to Elisha and said unto him, knowest thou that the Lord will take away thy master from thy head today? He answered, yea, I know it. Hold ye your peace. And Elijah said unto him, tarry, I pray thee here, for the Lord hath sent me to Jordan. And he said, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. And they too went on. And 50 men of the sons of the prophet went and stood to view afar off. And they stood, and they too stood by Jordan. Right? So check it out. So now you have, they said 50 men of the sons of the prophets. Okay. So it just goes to show, it's just showing you a little something even about the about the prophets, right? And how they had institutions that are basically set up for them, right? To where they learn, study, and they have brotherhoods and so on and so forth. Okay. So so now it says they stood far off, right? And they too stood by Jordan. Now check this out. This is where it just gets just beautiful. All right. It says, and Elijah took his mantle. Now, a mantle is like it's almost like an overcoat, all right, that you put over your garment, okay? Something similar to like a vest, a long, long vest. And it says, and wrapped it together and smote the waters. And they were divided hither and thither, so that they went over on dry ground. So that they too went over on dry ground. So basically, he took his mantle, right, and divided the waters. They walked on dry ground. How is that? You're looking at a river, right? A river that has water that flows continuously. They didn't put no blockage or anything like that. Stones to block it, wood to block it, right? They said he took his mantle off, right? Wrapped it together, and he smote the waters, and they were divided hither and thither. And so they went over on dry ground. Walked across on dry ground. The same way the Lord held still the flood, right, of the Jordan for the children of Israel to pass over, right, the Jordan, to go into the promised land, all right? And it came to pass, when they were gone over, that Elijah said unto Elisha, ask what I shall do for thee before I be taken from thee. So you can only imagine the type of wisdom that Elisha was, what type of wisdom and instruction that Elisha was getting from Elijah, all right? So he's like, ask me, what shall I do for thee before I be taken away from thee? And Elisha said, I pray thee, let a double portion of thy spirit be upon me, right? And he said, thou hast asked a hard thing. Nevertheless, if thou see me when I am taken from thee, it shall be so unto thee. But if not, it shall not be so. Okay. So he said, once you see me taken from you, and if it happens, then it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. All right. And it came to pass as they still went on and talked, behold, behold, there appeared a chariot of fire, right? A chariot of fire, okay? And horses of fire, and parted them both asunder. Okay, this is how fast it came on them. And Elijah went up as a whirlwind unto heaven. See that? So it's just like that fast. They were talking, you know what I mean? Talking, conversing and whatnot, and it just wham. And it's like I said, the chariot of fire appeared with horses of fire, and it took Elijah up into heaven, right? And Elisha saw it, and he cried, my father, my father. So he said, Abba, Abba. The chariots of Israel, or the chariot of Israel, and the horsemen thereof. And he saw him no more, and took hold of his own clothes and rent them in two pieces, right? So he ripped his own clothes. And he took up also the mantle of Elijah that fell from him, and went back and stood by the bank of Jordan. And he took the mantle of Elijah that fell from him, and smote the waters, and said, where is Yahweh, the God of Elijah? Hold on. Yeah, it is a powerful story. It says, and he took the mantle of Elijah that fell from him, and smote the waters, and said, where is the Yahweh, the God of Elijah? And when he also had smitten the waters, they parted hither and thither, and Elisha went over, right? He went over on dry ground across the Jordan. Okay. So it goes to show you right there that just as Elijah has said, right? If you see it and it happens, then it happens. All right. He asked for a double portion of his spirit. Okay. And when the sons of the prophets which were to view at Jericho saw him, they said, the spirit of Elijah doeth rest on Elisha. Right? The spirit of Elijah do rested upon Elisha. So it shows you that it happened, and they were able to see this. All right. And they came to meet him and bowed themselves to the ground before him. All right. So they knew that now the mantle and the successor has now become the teacher. All right. He is now the prophet. Okay. So he is now the new prophet in place of Elijah. Okay. So Elijah did many miraculous things, right? That we saw that even the prophets of the New Testament were able to do. Okay. You don't read about all of them being able to, to revive the dead or resurrect the dead, or heal, you know what I'm saying? But you read that Elisha, he was doing these things, right? He prayed and blinded people, blinded enemy soldiers. All right. He prayed and they got their sight back. All right. So this is how our fathers knew that only men who were of God were able to do such things. Okay. So now you understand that, you understand why it said that, John the Baptist would come, right? in the spirit of Elijah. All right, because Elijah, his ministry also dealt with repentance. All right. So remember, he was trying to get Ahab to repent in a lot of them. Okay. Now it says, and they said unto him, behold, now there be with thy servant 50 strong men. Let them go, we pray thee, and seek thy master. Lest peradventure the Spirit of the Lord have taken him up and cast him upon some mountain or into some valley. And he said, ye shall not sin. All right. So they in their minds, they were thinking like, hey, you know what? We can go look for his body just in case the Lord dropped him somewhere. He said, no. Elisha said, no, don't do it. Because he understood he was gone. And when they urged him till he was ashamed, he said, sins. We're like, all right, go ahead. Okay. They sent their 50 men, and they sought 3 days, but found him not. And when they came again to him, for he tarried at Jericho, he said unto them, did I not say unto you, go not? And the men of the city said unto Elisha, behold, I pray thee, the situation of this city is pleasant, and as my Lord seeth, but the water is not, and the ground is barren, right? So remember, here in Jericho was cursed, okay? And he said, bring me a new curse and put some salt therein, and they brought it to him. And he went forth unto the spring of the waters and cast salt in there and said, thus saith the Lord, I have healed these waters. There shall not be from thence any more death or barren land. So the waters were healed unto this day, according to the saying of Elisha, which he spake. And he went up from thence unto Bethel, and as he was going up by the way, there came forth little children out of the city and mocked him and said unto him, go up, thou bald head, go up, thou bald head. And he turned back and looked on them and cursed them in the name of Yah. And there came forth 2 she-bears out of the woods and tear 42 children of them. And he went from thence to Mount Carmel, and from thence he returned to Samaria, right? So basically he was stationed in Samaria, okay? So you know what I'm saying? So this is, now you're starting to deal with Elisha, right? Who is the successor of Elijah. And Elijah was a very powerful prophet, okay, for the people, all right. He also was a very obedient servant of the Lord. So, and he made sure he did what he had to do, right? But he was ready to, to leave, okay? And we see that, the Lord basically took him, all right? So just like they say with Enoch, all right, it says that, Enoch walked with God and was not. So it basically shows you, that he was taken, okay? He was taken of the Lord. So you had Enoch who was taken, all right, in his lifetime. And then you had Elijah who was now taken in his lifetime. And now you're going to see later on, right, as these times progress, that the Lord will come and deliver his people, and how we will be taken up in our lifetime away from, away from the said destructions that are to come. All right. So, that's the thing. So I just wanted to bring out this timeline here. There's a couple of timelines and stuff like that, and just so you guys can see. So this is dealing with the genealogy of the kings of ancient Israel and Judah, right? So these are in red, these are the northern kingdom kings, and in the green, these are the southern kingdom kings, right? And in the blue, These are the rulers of the United Kingdom of Israel. All right. So as you see here, Saul, right, and then his son Ishbosheth, okay, and then the kingdom was translated to King David, and then from David he had Solomon, then from Solomon he had Rehoboam, all right. So then Rehoboam had a wife which he married, which was the daughter of Absalom, okay. So you see that he did what? Married his cousin, all right. So then from there, you see that Abijam comes in, then you have Asa, then you see Jehoshaphat. So from Asa to Jehoshaphat, you had Omri and you had Ahab, okay? So these are the, I'm gonna say these are the kings that they were basically, what's the word I'm looking for? Contemporary with. So meaning that they were around the same time, okay? So then you had Jehoshaphat, who had a son named Jeroham, okay? Then you had Ahab and Jezebel that had a son named Jeroham, right? And Azariah. So this was the Azariah, right? That we seen that died and had no son, okay? So then his brother Jeroham ended up ended up receiving the kingdom, okay? Then you see the sister, right, or the daughter of Ahab, which is Athaliah, all right, her husband was Jeroham of Judah. And then they had a son named Azariah, okay. Azariah died, and then his mother, Athaliah, became queen, and then she basically killed all of her sons' except for one, and that was Jehoash. All right. And then through Jehoash, that's where the line basically continued. Okay. The line continued all the way down to we see Jehoaz, Zedekiah, and Jehoiakim. Right. Then you see Jehoiachin, which is Coniah or Jeconiah, right, who was the last king. Okay. And then he was carried away into Babylon. And then you see that his uncle, Zedekiah, basically became king. All right. So he was the king that was basically deportated and into Syria, and his eyes put out. All right. And his sons were killed before his eyes. And then Nebuchadnezzar put out Zedekiah's eyes. All right. They put out his eyes. So the last thing he sees, right, before he was blinded was his sons being murdered. But that was for his disobedience and for his sin. So you see, that's how the line of Judah basically continued. And then you see that from here, you see that Jeroham's line was basically destroyed, Azariah's line. So this is all of the house of Ahab right here, cut off by Jehu. All right. Then Jehu had 4 sons. All right. So the Lord said that he would sit on the throne as king of Israel for 4 generations. All right. So 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, going all the way down to Zechariah. Then Zechariah was killed. Then you see Shulam took power. Then from Shulam was killed. Then Menahem took power. Then Menahem had a son, Pekiah. And then from Pekiah, then you see Pekah. And then from Pekah, you see that Hosea became king. All right. So it goes to show you that the arrows are the direct lines, and then, or the transfers of power. So that is how, so these are, are the kings, all right? Then it shows you right here, so some of the dates for the kings. So you see from David, Adonijah, the pretender, right, to Solomon, who was the true king. Then you see from Rehoboam, his son, all right, who became king. Then, of course, the first dynasty of the kingdom of Israel. It was not called Samaria at first. Samaria did not come until around the 3rd dynasty. All right. Then you had, he was the founder. Omri was the founder of Samaria. All right. Remember, we read that history. Okay. But the northern kingdom is also referred to as Sumeria. All right. So sometime when you read in the scripture where the Lord talks about Samaria, he's actually talking about all of the northern kingdom of Israel. All right. So that was the house of Jeroboam that was exterminated. The house of Baasha was exterminated. The house of Zimri was exterminated. So that's why I said they had no dynasty. All right. So Elah was his son, but Elah was killed. So there was no dynasty because their dynasties did not continue. Then the third dynasty, right, which was the house of Omri, which you see Omri the father, you see Ahab the son, then Azariah the grandson, and then Jeroham, who was the great grandson. Then you see the fourth dynasty, the house of Jehu, right, which Jehu, Jehoaz, Jehoash, Jeroboam the second, and then Zechariah. All right. Then there's no dynasty here. Then the fifth dynasty, which was Menahem and Pekah. Then there was no dynasty here for Pekah. Then no dynasty for Hosea. All right, because he didn't have any successive sons. All right. So then you see the house of David. How it continued. So you see that a northern Athaliah, right? She was of the house of Omri. Remember, we pointed that out. Okay. So you see that this is the house of David restored, right? After when Jehoash became king. Then it shows you how the dynasty basically continued all the way to Zedekiah, where they all the way to the deportation. Okay. So let's see, what was the other one I was looking for? Okay, here we go. So now this is the northern kingdom kings and the southern kingdom, all right, kings and prophets, okay? So you had the kings and the prophets, all right? This was dealing with Samaria. So during the time of Jeroboam, right, who reigned 22 years, you see that it was Ahijah. Ahijah was the prophet of that time. Was he the only prophet? No. We saw that that the school that they had, right, was called the Sons of the Prophets. That was their school, okay? So you see that he was the prophet during Jeroboam the first, and then Nadab, all right, his son, okay? And then you see that during the time of Baasha, which he reigned 24 years, it was Jehu, okay? So Jehu, then Baasha's son Elath, and then during the days of Zimri and Omri, Jehu was the prophet, okay? Then you see Ahab, right, who we see here, who reigned for 22 years. He was his prophet was Elijah, okay? And then Azariah, during the reign of Azariah, it was Elijah, right? Because remember, we saw that Elijah was still prophesying.
Hey, Brother Karash.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I had a question.
Oh, go ahead.
So, what is that? Zimri? He only reigned 7 days?
Zimri, yes. 7 days.
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yeah, he only reigned 7 days.
Jeez. Okay, I just want to make sure I was looking at that right.
Yep. Like that's how fast he got killed, man. They conspired against these guys. Like with the Northern Kingdom, it was always like some sort of conspiracy to commit murder or something. You know, if they didn't like you having a throne, then they kill you, you know, or some sort of coup or something. But yeah, he was like the shortest reign, you know what I'm saying, that I read about. But yeah, he was basically murdered, Zimri. Then you had then Azariah, all right. So Ahab was a prophesying during this time. Then you see, Elijah was prophesying during the time of Azariah. And then you see Elisha, who was the apprentice, took over. And after that, he was the prophet, you know what I'm saying? He was the prophet until the end, I believe, of the reign of Zechariah. Who was of the house of Jehu. So then it's funny, man, because Elisha was such an impactful and powerful prophet. It said that when he died of a sickness. That's the thing. You know what I mean? He died of a sickness. You know, I don't know why, but when it just kind of like, well, damn, he died of a sickness. Like, wow. After all the good that all of the good and the things that he was doing, I guess that's how the Lord called him home, right? But it said that this man still indeed was very powerful, even in death, to the point where they had dug up the bones, right, or the grave of this prophet, right? And one of the guys had fell in. Oh no, they had threw a body in there, a dead body in there with his bones, and the man came back to life. The man came back to life. You see what I'm saying? And it freaked everybody out. I gotta find that. I gotta find that when we do like something on Elijah. I gotta find that one. That was a trip. Said because it said they threw the body on there, man, and he just came back to life. Man had been dead for a while too. So then you see the prophets of the southern kingdom, right? You'll see that it was Shemaiah, right? During Rehoboam and Abijah. And then, of course, during the reign of Asa, right, was Azariah and Hanai. And then, of course, during Jehoshaphat, when he reigned for 25 years, it was Micaiah, right? Then during the reign of Jeroham and Azariah, you see there is Jazael, all right, or Jehaziel. So those are the prophets, that were reigning at that time with them. Excuse me, the prophets that were prophesying at that time with them. So the prophets, the prophets had how can I put it? They had a very, very, you know what I'm saying, a very powerful impact, on the events and stuff like that occurred, with the kings of Israel and with Israel itself. So remember, the prophets, they were the messengers, they were the messengers of the Most High. Okay. And those offices, they still ain't changed when we read in the New Testament. Brothers were still going out and warning the people. But we saw more so that the prophets were, for the children of Israel, and you see Jeremiah, I believe Jeremiah, he was like the prophet that was prophesying not only against Israel, but against the nations too, So it's crazy. Hold on, let me see something. But anyway, we see. So yeah, so we seen the impact, man, that Elijah had. All right, we seen the impact that he had.